ladies, before we go any further tonight, I just need you to pause and breathe. Just inhale that strength God planted in you and exhale every burden you've been dragging behind you, because tonight we're about to talk about something that's going to stretch you, free you, and remind you who you are. I came to tell somebody, maybe it's you, that you have been clinging, holding, gripping things, people, situations, and relationships that have been weighing down the wings God gave you to soar. And hear me, sis, there is a version of you that is not afraid to let go. See, the truth is men. They can't resist a woman who has learned the art of detachment, not because she's cold, not because she's distant, but because she's whole, because she knows her worth doesn't hinge on whether someone chooses her or not. A woman who detaches, she doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't beg, she becomes. And when you become that woman, baby, you shift atmospheres. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to step back so God can step in. How to loosen your grip so your power can flow freely again. Because when you detach from what drains you, you connect with what defines you. Let's get into it. Detachment is not rejection, it's redirection. And the moment you truly understand, that is the moment your spirit starts to breathe again. You see, so many of us have been taught that to let go is to lose, that to release is to forfeit something valuable, that to step away is to step into loneliness. But I came here to pull the veil back and tell you the truth. Detachment is not you walking away empty-handed, it's you walking away open-handed. Open enough for God to pour into you what He's always wanted to give but couldn't because your hands were too full. We get caught up in these cycles, don't we? Holding on tight to people, to relationships, to situations that look like they have potential but are really draining our purpose. We convince ourselves that if we hold on just a little longer, maybe He'll see our value, maybe it'll turn around, maybe if I love a little harder, show up a little more, silence myself a little deeper, maybe then I'll be worthy of being chosen. And in the middle of all that performing, striving, clinging, you forget you're not an object waiting to be picked. You're a woman already appointed, already called, already worthy. So when I say detachment is redirection, I mean that detaching from something or someone is not about bitterness. It's not about shutting down your heart or building walls so thick no one can get in. It's not about proving a point or trying to punish anybody. Detachment is spiritual clarity. It's when God gently, or sometimes not so gently, pulls your spirit to the side and says, "Daughter, you're looking for provision in a place where I only meant to give you a lesson. You've overstayed in a season that was only meant to be temporary. You've been sowing seeds in soil I already marked as infertile, and in His grace, God calls you to detach, not because He's taking something from you, but because He's leading you back to something better, alignment, peace, purpose, freedom." I know what it feels like to believe that walking away means failure. We think if we let go, it means we wasted time, we wasted years, we wasted prayers, we wasted love. But can I tell you something? Nothing in God's kingdom is wasted. Not a single tear, not a single late night, not a single ounce of love you gave in truth and sincerity. You didn't waste anything you invested in your growth. And sometimes growth looks like recognizing when an assignment is complete and having the courage to exit the classroom. See, detachment doesn't diminish your love, it refines it. It says, I can still honor what we shared, but I honor myself more. It says, I trust that what God has for me won't require me to shrink, chase, or compromise. And that's what makes a woman magnetic. That's what shifts the atmosphere when you walk in a room. Because men, opportunities, and blessings are drawn to a woman who moves with clarity, not chaos. And clarity comes from redirection, knowing that your worth is not tied to who stays or who leaves, but to who God says you are regardless. Some of you have been in spaces where you've confused attachment with loyalty. You've called it faithfulness when really it was fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of not being chosen again. But detachment breaks that chain. Detachment says, I can release what doesn't nourish me without guilt, without apology, without regret. Because what God removes, He replaces, and what He replaces is always more aligned with your healed heart than your hurting one. I want to speak to the woman who's been afraid to let go because she thought it made her unloving. You've been scared to detach because you thought it would make you look heartless, selfish, cold. But the truth is, detachment is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and for the person you're releasing. Because as long as you're tethered to something that's not feeding you, neither of you can grow into the fullness God intended. You're not doing anybody a favor by holding on to something that expired. You're just delaying both of your destinies. And yes, it hurts. Yes, there are tears. Detachment is not numbness. It's not pretending like you don't care. It's feeling every ounce of grief, but choosing to move forward anyway. It's letting the tears fall as you pack up your spirit and walk back into the space God called you to before you got distracted. It's reminding yourself that you are not here to beg for crumbs when God has prepared a feast. And sometimes the only thing standing between you and the table is your refusal to leave the wrong kitchen. When you detach, you don't lose love, you refine your capacity to receive real love. You don't lose opportunities, you clear the path for divine ones. And you don't lose yourself, you find the version of you that doesn't settle, that doesn't strive, that doesn't sacrifice her peace for someone else's potential. That's why detachment is redirection. It's God saying, "Daughter, I'm not punishing you, I'm positioning you." And positioning always requires movement, it requires shifting, it requires surrender. If you want to be irresistible, radiant, magnetic, don't grip tighter. Loosen your hands, loosen your heart. Let go of what was never meant to be carried this far. And trust that when you detach, you're not stepping into emptiness, you're stepping into alignment. You're not losing love, you're making room for deeper love. You're not walking away from purpose, you're walking straight toward it. A woman anchored in purpose is never desperate for presence. When you truly know who you are and why God placed you on this earth, you move differently. You speak differently. You love differently. You no longer spend your days and nights anxiously waiting on a text, overanalyzing conversations, or bending over backwards just to make someone see your worth. Purpose grounds you in such a way that you're not swayed by who comes or who goes. You're steady, you're solid, you're sure. See, when you don't know your purpose, you search for identity in other people. You attach yourself to their validation, their attention, their affection, hoping it will fill the void. You make their presence your anchor, and when they drift, so do you. But when purpose becomes your anchor, you don't drift. You don't waver. You don't lose yourself trying to keep someone else. You stay planted because your foundation is not fragile. Your foundation is divine. There is a confidence that comes from being aligned with your calling. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about pretending to have it all together. I'm talking about the quiet, unshakable knowing that you were created on purpose, for purpose, with purpose. And when you know that, you understand that anyone who enters your life is not completing you, they're complementing you. You're not empty, waiting for someone to fill you up. You're full, and they're just an addition, not a necessity. That changes the whole dynamic of how you show up in relationships. You don't tolerate inconsistency because your purpose demands stability. You don't chase attention because your purpose commands respect. You don't shrink to fit into places that don't recognize your light because your purpose has already given you a seat at a table God handcrafted just for you. The thing about a woman anchored in purpose is that she becomes magnetic, not because she's trying to be, but because alignment is attractive, wholeness is attractive, peace is attractive. A woman who knows where she's going doesn't have to beg anyone to walk alongside her because people are naturally drawn to the clarity and confidence she carries. And let me tell you something, a real man, recognizes that energy. He recognizes that you're not here to play games. You're not here to waste time. You're not here to be a placeholder while he figures out what he wants. You know what you want because you know who you are. You've spent time with God. You've spent time healing. You've spent time digging deep, confronting your insecurities, facing your fears, doing the inner work so that you're not dependent on someone else to define your worth. That's the kind of woman a man can't resist, not because she's hard to get, but because she's hard to forget. She leaves an imprint, not just because of her beauty or her body, but because of her essence. Her purpose leaks out of her smile, her stride, her conversation, and that is something that can't be faked. But I need you to understand that anchoring in purpose is not always glamorous. It requires seasons of solitude. It requires sitting with yourself when it feels lonely, choosing growth over comfort, choosing vision over validation. It means turning down invitations that don't align with where you're going, saying no to relationships that distract you more than they develop you. It's not easy, but it's worth it, because the woman who emerges from that process is unshakable. She's not tossed by emotions or opinions. She's not easily swayed by sweet words and empty promises. She's discerning, and her discernment protects her from entertaining what doesn't serve her destiny. When you're anchored in purpose, you operate from overflow, not emptiness. You give love not because you need it back to feel whole, but because you're already full and you enjoy pouring into others. You serve not from a place of desperation, but from a place of abundance. You create, you lead, you inspire, all because you're connected to the source, not the surface. And when people experience you, they feel that depth. They sense that you're not easily shaken, that your joy is not conditional, that your peace is not negotiable. I want to talk to the woman who has spent too long thinking that her value was tied to who stayed. You measured your worth by who pursued you, who complimented you, who showed up for you. And when people left or overlooked you, you questioned if you were enough. But I came to tell you their presence or absence does not dictate your value. Your value was sealed the moment God breathed life into you and assigned purpose to your name. And when you root yourself in that truth, you stop chasing shadows and start building legacies. You don't have to dim your light to make someone stay. You don't have to dilute your dreams to make someone comfortable. You don't have to silence your voice to keep peace. Purpose makes you bold enough to speak, strong enough to stand, and secure enough to stay true to yourself even when others don't understand. And that boldness, that security, that wholeness, that's what makes you irresistible, not because you're trying to impress, but because you're unapologetically aligned. You've stopped waiting for someone else to validate you because God already affirmed you. A woman anchored in purpose walks with her head high, not because life has always been easy, but because she knows every setback, every heartbreak, every disappointment was part of the process that refined her. She doesn't wear desperation like perfume, hoping to lure someone in. She wears grace, dignity, and confidence, knowing that what is for her will recognize her without her having to lose herself. That is the power of being anchored. You don't drift with the tides of attention. You don't crumble under the weight of rejection. You stand firm and unmovable because your foundation is not built on fickle feelings. It's built on eternal purpose. When you know your assignment, you don't panic when people walk away. You don't crumble when they don't call back. You bless them and keep moving because purpose has places to take you, and you don't have time to be tied down by people who don't see the vision. You're not desperate for presence because you're already filled with divine presence. You've already been validated in the secret place. You've already been affirmed in your spirit, and that makes you powerful beyond measure. Letting go of control invites divine alignment. That's a hard truth to swallow, especially for women like us women who have learned how to survive by managing, fixing, orchestrating, and holding everything together. We were taught that control keeps us safe. If we can just anticipate the next move, if we can just read between the lines fast enough, if we can just keep our hands on every detail, maybe we won't get hurt again. Maybe we won't be blindsided again. Maybe we won't lose what we love. Control feels like protection, but in reality, it's a prison. The problem with control is that it places the weight of outcomes on your shoulders, not God's. It tricks you into believing that if you can just work harder, love harder, show up harder, you can guarantee that everything will go the way you want it to go. And while you're over here exhausting yourself trying to keep all the plates spinning, you're missing the gentle whisper of God saying, "Daughter, if you'll release it, I can redirect it." We forget that our vision is limited. We see through a small lens, colored by our past, our pain, our expectations. But God, He sees the end from the beginning. He knows where every path leads. And when we loosen our grip, when we unclench our fists and say, "God, you can have it," that's when alignment flows. Alignment is not about forcing pieces to fit. It's about allowing the pieces to move into place at the right time, in the right season, by the right hand, and most of the time, that hand isn't yours. Letting go of control doesn't mean you're passive. It doesn't mean you don't have vision, standards, or desires. It means you recognize that the how and the when are not your responsibility, they're God's. Your role is obedience, not orchestration. Your role is discernment, not domination. Your role is surrender, not striving. I need to talk to the woman who has been white, knuckling a relationship, a career, a dream, trying to make it bend to her timeline, her desires, her expectations. I know it's scary to loosen your grip. I know it feels risky to say, "God, I trust you even if this doesn't turn out how I planned." But here's what I've learned. The outcomes we manufacture from fear are never as beautiful as the outcomes God births from faith. Control may give you temporary relief, but surrender gives you lasting peace when you let go. You make space for divine alignment for the people, opportunities, and relationships that are truly designed for your destiny to find you without resistance. You don't have to manipulate conversations to get someone to see your worth. You don't have to chase down love or prove your value. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into a narrative that was never yours to begin with. You can stand tall in who you are, do your part, and trust that what is meant for you will not pass you by. Control says, "I have to make it happen." Surrender says, "If it's mine, it will happen." And that shift changes everything. When you let go of control, you also let go of anxiety. Anxiety is rooted in the fear that things won't go as we planned. It's the nagging voice that says, "If I don't stay on top of this, it's going to fall apart." But here's the thing, even when you were micromanaging every detail, things still slipped through your fingers. So why not release it into the hands of the one who has never failed, who has never missed a detail, who has already ordered your steps? Trusting God's alignment doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It means that when challenges come, you don't crumble because you know they didn't catch God off guard. Letting go of control makes room for miracles. Miracles don't happen in the realm of certainty. They happen in the space where you say, "God, I don't know how you're going to do it, but I trust that you will." And when you make peace with uncertainty, when you allow God to write the script without your edits and revisions, you open yourself to blessings you couldn't have even dreamed of scripting for yourself. Divine alignment brings opportunities that fit so naturally. You realize you could have never orchestrated them with your own hands. It brings relationships that flow with ease without the strain and struggle of forcing compatibility. It brings clarity that cuts through confusion, not because you figured it all out, but because you positioned yourself to receive revelation instead of trying to manufacture resolution. I want to speak to the woman who has been tired, drained, weary from holding on so tightly. You've been carrying it all, the fear, the worry, the what-ifs, the regrets. And maybe it's made you feel powerful in the short term, but in the long run, it's made you heavy. God is inviting you to set it down, to breathe again, to trust that He's got it even when you don't, to believe that releasing control is not reckless, it's reverent. It's you saying, "God, I believe you love me more than I love myself. I believe your plans are higher than my plans, and I believe you can do exceedingly, abundantly above all I can ask or imagine if I'll just get out of the way. That is not weakness. That is wisdom, you see. Control is fueled by scarcity. It's fueled by the lie that if you don't hold on tight enough, good things will slip away. But divine alignment is fueled by abundance. It's fueled by the truth that what is assigned to you cannot be snatched, cannot be sabotaged, cannot be stolen. And when you internalize that truth, you become lighter, freer, you flow instead of forcing. You attract instead of chasing. You allow instead of obsessing. There is a deep peace that comes from knowing that the same God who designed your purpose is capable of delivering your promise. You don't have to sit up late at night plotting every detail. You don't have to play mental chess trying to outmaneuver outcomes. You can rest in the assurance that what God has ordained will find you, favor you, and fulfill you without your manipulation, without your micromanaging, without your meddling. All he needs is your yes, not your stranglehold. Letting go of control doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to let the one with the full blueprint take the lead. It means you're wise enough to admit that your strength has limits, but his does not. And when you let him guide, align, and orchestrate, you experience a level of grace, flow, and ease that control could never manufacture. You step into rooms you didn't have to kick down doors to enter. You encounter people you didn't have to contort yourself to impress. You receive blessings you didn't have to scheme to secure. Wholeness is the most irresistible energy you can carry. And when I say wholeness, I'm not talking about perfection. I'm not talking about having every piece of your life lined up like a checklist. I'm not talking about looking flawless on the outside while your soul is crumbling on the inside. I'm talking about the deep, unshakable, grounded knowing that you are complete within yourself, that your identity is intact, your heart is settled, and your spirit is anchored even when life is still unfolding. Wholeness means you are not moving through life fragmented, not constantly searching for someone else to fix what you believe is broken. You are standing in your fullness, aware of who you are, whose you are, and what you bring to every table you sit at. The reason wholeness is so magnetic is because it creates a presence that speaks before you even open your mouth. You can walk into a room and without saying a word, people sense the peace on you. They sense the confidence on you. They sense that you are not looking around to be chosen because you already know you're called. You are not fishing for compliments because you have already affirmed yourself in the quiet spaces when no one else was clapping. That kind of wholeness cannot be manufactured through makeup, clothes, or carefully curated Instagram posts. It is cultivated in the deep work of healing, forgiving, releasing, and growing. See, when you are whole, you don't look to relationships to validate your worth. You enjoy companionship, but you don't depend on it to make you feel valuable. You appreciate love, but you don't make it your lifeline. You are not dating, marrying, connecting, or attaching to complete a puzzle that you think is missing pieces. You are coming into every relationship, every opportunity, every season as a woman who knows she is already enough. And that, right there, changes the entire atmosphere of how people engage with you. A whole woman has boundaries, not walls. She is open, but not desperate. She can say yes, and she can say no, and both are spoken with clarity and conviction. She doesn't entertain confusion, because confusion does not match her energy. She is not afraid to walk away from what is not aligned, because she knows that walking away does not diminish her value, it protects it. Wholeness makes you selective, not because you are arrogant, but because you are aware. Aware of how precious your time is. Aware of how valuable your energy is. Aware of how sacred your heart is. There's a reason why people are drawn to women who have done their healing work. It's because their peace speaks louder than their pain. Their joy speaks louder than their trauma. Their discernment speaks louder than their desperation. A woman who is whole doesn't need to prove herself because she knows that who she is speaks for itself. She doesn't have to overcompensate, overexplain, or overextend because her presence is already more than enough. Let me talk to the woman who has spent years thinking she had to earn love by fixing others, by sacrificing herself, by bending backwards just to be seen. I know what it feels like to think that if you can just help enough, serve enough, give enough, maybe someone will finally choose you. But can I tell you the truth? You don't have to bleed yourself dry to be loved. You don't have to become a savior in every relationship to be valuable. Wholeness reminds you that you are worthy simply because you exist. Simply because God called you, designed you, and breathed life into you. A whole woman is not afraid to be alone because she knows that solitude does not equal lack. It equals space to hear God clearly, space to nourish her soul, space to rest and reset without distraction. She doesn't rush into connections just to avoid silence because her own company is rich enough to sustain her. That's what makes her so captivating. She is not running from herself. She is at peace with who she is, flaws and all, growth in process and all. And that authenticity is magnetic in a world full of masks and pretenses. When you are whole, you stop performing. You don't have to become who someone wants just to keep them around. You don't have to shrink your dreams to make someone comfortable. You don't have to hide your brilliance to soothe someone's insecurity. You can be fully, unapologetically you and trust that the people assigned to your life will love you as you are, not as you pretend to be. And those who cannot handle your fullness, you bless them and release them because their absence is not a loss when your wholeness is intact. Wholeness gives you discernment that keeps you from settling. You recognize red flags faster because you are no longer trying to ignore them just to fill a void. You hear the tone beneath the words because your spirit is tuned in, not distracted by neediness. You honor your intuition because you have built trust within yourself. And that trust becomes a compass that keeps you from veering off your path just to accommodate someone else's journey. Wholeness is protection, it's provision, it's power. I want you to understand that wholeness is not a destination you arrive at one day and never revisit. It is a continual process of checking in with yourself, of tending to your soul, of healing layer by layer as life unfolds. But as you commit to that journey, as you do the work of becoming whole day by day, you cultivate a radiance that no one can take from you. You glow from the inside out because you are not fragmented or fractured. You are integrated, mind, body, spirit all working together in harmony. That is what makes you irresistible. A woman who is whole does not chase what does not chase her peace. She does not cling to what costs her clarity. She does not stay in places where she has to negotiate her value. She stands steady and sure, knowing that love rooted in truth will always recognize her. Opportunities aligned with her purpose will always find her. Blessings designed for her life will always flow to her. And because she knows that she can rest, she can trust, she can wait with grace instead of anxiety. When you carry wholeness, you attract people who are also whole or who are at least committed to their own healing. You no longer entertain broken connections that mirror your past pain because you have outgrown those patterns. You no longer settle for crumbs because you know you deserve the feast. You no longer abandon yourself to keep company because you'd rather walk alone in peace than together in chaos. That is the power, the beauty, the magnetism of wholeness. It's not loud, but it speaks volumes. It's not forceful, but it's undeniable. It doesn't demand attention, but it commands respect.